All right, so this is a video over our completing the square activity, just in case you missed our synchronous class. So if you go to our 3.3 folder, you'll be able to open up the activity. It's called 3.3 Completing the Square. So I want you to have that open and following along and completing things as we work through it in this video. So if we go to slide 2, this is just an example problem that's been done for us. So looking at our algebra tiles, our red algebra tile represents x squared. So it has the length of x and the width of x. Our yellow tiles represent just x. So it has one length or one dimension that's equal to x, and the other dimension is equal to 1. And so we've got our other x tile rotated around, but it has the same dimensions. It's got one that's the length of x and one that's the length of 1. And then our blue square, it's a little difficult to see here, but it is our ones tile. So it has a length and width of just 1. So then looking at our equation. So we're going to be given x squared and the x place, the x term. So here we have 2x. So that's why we have 2 yellow x tiles. So then to complete the square, we had to use one blue tile to fill in our algebra tile picture. So that's why we have a 1 in this first square. On the next row is when we break this into our factors. So that's what's on the sides of our algebra tiles. So along the side, we have x and a positive 1. So we have x plus 1. And then we have x and another positive 1 across the top. That gives us our second factor of x plus 1. Because our two factors are the same, we can combine them together to be x plus 1 raised to the second power, or rather squared. Going on to the next slide, here we have a problem set up for us, but we need to finish it out. So we're going to take our blue ones tile, and you can drag these tiles to then finish out your square, or rather complete the square. Let's see if I can grab these. And when you're dragging these, they don't have to be perfect, but we do want to get the general idea that we are kind of building out this square. So I'm going to use copy and paste to help me out a little bit. So then, coming over to our expression, we have x squared plus 8x plus blank. So the x squared is our red block. We have 8 yellow x blocks. And then we need to know how many ones blocks we have. So we can count them out, and when we do, we have 16 total. So then looking for the factors, what we multiply together to make this expression or to make this square. So across the top, we have x, and then we have 4 lengths of 1. So we have x plus 4. And we have the same thing going down the side. We have the length of x, and then 4 lengths of 1. So we have another x plus 4. And again, because they're the same, we can rewrite this as 1 factor of x plus 4 raised to the second power. In our next problem, we have the same situation, just this time we have x squared plus 6x. So we're going to do the same thing here. We'll start by using our blue algebra tiles to complete the square. So once it's completed, again, we've got our 1 x squared red tile. We have 6 yellow x tiles. And then we have 9 blue ones tiles. To fill in our second row, going across the top of our algebra tiles, we have x plus 3. And going down the side, we have another x plus 3. So we can rewrite that as x plus 3 squared. In problem number 3, we're given the same amount of information about the expression, but this time our x tiles have not been put in the picture for us. So we're going to remember that we're trying to build a square. So that means the length and the width have to be the same. So we have to use a total of 4 of these yellow x tiles. So for the length and width to be the same, if I put 1 on the bottom, I then have to put 1 on the top. And I need 4 of these total. So it ends up being 2 and 2. And then we'll add in our blue squares. And again, these don't have to be perfect, just so we get the idea. So we have our 1 red x squared, our 4 yellow x's, and then we have 4 blue ones tiles. So now we have to figure out our dimensions. So we have x, and then going across the top of these 2 yellow ones, we only have the length of 2. So we would have x plus 2 across the top, and we have the same thing going down the side, x and then plus another 2. Which again, we can rewrite as one factor, x plus 2 squared. So in this next problem, we have x squared plus 10x plus blank. And we have nothing built out for us, so we're going to start by grabbing 1 red x squared block. And then we need 10 x's, so 10 of these yellow rectangles combined. So again, if we put 1 on the side, we've got to put 1 on the bottom. We're going to do that until we have a total of 10. So now we have our 10 yellow x's. And then we need to fill in the rest of our square with our blue ones blocks. And I'm going to use copy and paste to help me fill this in just a little faster. And then we can count up our ones tiles, and we have 25 ones tiles all together. Our dimensions for our factors, we have x, and then we have plus 5 across the top, and we have the same thing going down the side. So then we can rewrite it as one factor, x plus 5 squared. So now we're going to stop and think about our pattern. So there's a pattern to figuring out that number that goes in that blank in the first row. So I want you to think about, what are we doing to the b value, that number in front of x, or the number of yellow tiles we have, to then create our c value, the number we're filling in, or the number of blue tiles that we have to use. So let's go back to one of our previous problems. I'm going to choose problem number 2. So here, to create our square, we had to take this b value of 6 and we divided it by 2 So we knew we had to put 3 x's on each side. But then to get this 9, we had to fill in this square, which was a 3 by 3 square. So what we ended up doing was taking this 6, we divided it by 2, and then we squared it. So that's our pattern. So every time we took our b value, divided by 2, and squared it. So now we're going to apply this pattern to some not as nice problems. So here we have x squared plus 3x plus blank. So I want you to take that b value of 3, divide it by 2, and then square it. I'm hoping you have a calculator that you're able to use for this. And when you do, we get 2.25. So then if we were able to create a square of algebra tiles using fractions, we would have 1.5 on each side, across the top and down the side, because remember we had to take that b value and divide it in 2 for those yellow rectangles. So then we can rewrite that as x plus 1.5 squared. And problem number 6 is a very similar situation. Just now we have x squared plus 5x. So we're going to do the same thing. So we're going to take 5 divided by 2, which gives us 2.5. And then we're going to square that. And we get 6.25. So then the dimensions of the square, we just used that 5 divided by 2. So we'd have 2.5 of those yellow rectangles across the top and 2.5 of those yellow rectangles going down the side. And then we also have problems where we have a minus sign in front of our b value. So all this means is that our b value is going to be negative when we use it in that equation. So we're going to follow the same steps. So we're going to take this negative 8 and divide it by 2, and we get negative 4. And then we're going to square negative 4. Now those of you with phones that are using this, remember if we square a negative, that's a negative 4 times a negative 4. So our answer should be a positive 16. But then our factors are just the same. If we take our negative 8 and divide it by 2, we'd have a negative 4 across the top and a negative 4 down the side. So we'd have x minus 4 squared. Our last problem, we have both a negative and an odd number. So we'll get some decimals, and that's okay. But same pattern still, even though it's negative and odd. So we'll take negative 11 and divide it by 2. And then we're going to square that number. So for this problem, we would need 30.25 little blue tiles to finish out the square. And then for the factors, if we have negative 11 yellow tiles, we would need negative 5.5 going across the top, which is why we have the minus sign, and another negative 5.5 going down the side. Again, that's why we have the minus sign. So we can then rewrite it as x minus 5.5 squared. You made it. So we're going to be using this skill a lot. So if you need help, please make sure that you ask me or someone else, or maybe look it up on your own and see what you can figure out. But make sure that you submit this on Schoology so that you receive credit for completing this activity.